Hello everyone, and welcome to another R tutorial video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how we can use size or drive size from data. Um, this is going to be similar in some aspects to the way we used color, but it's going to be slightly different in the sense that we are a lot more restricted with what we can do with size than what we could do with color. Specifically, the first restriction comes in the types of geometry. So although we didn't go through examples of it, this call parameter driven by data with style and all that, all those other parameters, those could be used on any type of geometry. They could be used with polygons through tm polygon. They could be used with lines through tm line, or they could be used with points through tm dot. And it would look the same parameter setup regardless. But with size, we are a lot more limited. Size cannot be used with polygons or lines. It can only be used with point data. And in specific, it has to use a new geometry call called tm bubbles. This will not work with tm dot. You have to use this new geometry called tm bubbles. The second limitation, if you want to call it a limitation, is that tm bubbles creates what's called a proportional symbol. And what this means that the size of the dot on the map, or the size of the point on the map, corresponds directly to or proportionally to the increment in the data. And what this means two things. This means, one, you can't use it with ordinal data, right? Categorical data, because categorical data doesn't work that way. And two, this means that you aren't able to incorporate the style parameter and the end parameter. They won't do anything in this case because the data is tied directly proportionally to the size of the point. So again, if you're familiar with other cartography methods, which hopefully you are, this is equivalent to a proportional symbols map. So let's go ahead and look at the code and how this would work. So I've loaded in a different data set from before. We're using the Metro data set that comes with TM shape. And the Metro data set, if we just quickly run it, you'll see that it has a bunch of different names. These are names of major cities. And then it has their population going from 1950 through 2020, and then they're projecting it out into the future. So what we can do here is we can make a proportional symbols map with the population of, let's take the 1990 population. So to do this, we're going to call a map underscore bubbles, because we're going to be using tm bubble. So the first thing we're going to do, just like we always do, is tm shape with shape, passing in the Metro data set. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to call in that new geometry of tm bubbles. And you'll see that tm bubbles has the size parameter. It also has the call parameter. And if you were to read through the ... you'll see that it actually does have the style and end parameter, but that's because you can use color in tm bubbles to make a bivariate map. So you could have one variable driving the size, and then you can have another variable driving that choropleth map like we've seen before. But for now, we're just going to focus on size. And this is going to work just like how it worked for color, where we're going to set this equal to the name of a variable in quotes. And we're going to do pop 1990. And if we run this line of code, we don't get any crashes, which is always a good sign. And then we'll run map underscore bubbles. And you'll see that what we get here is this sort of gray bubbles, these gray points. And again, the points are now relative based on the size of the population. And it's a little unfortunate here that the legend is a little obscured. We'll talk about legends in probably the next video. But you can see here that what we've done is we've made a proportional symbols map based on the 1990 population. So what I want to do is another quick example, and I want to sort of prove to you something, that we can actually use bubbles to make a bivariate map. So if we were to make a map underscore bivariate, so we're going to copy this. Now, I would not recommend from a cartographic perspective actually doing what I'm about to show you. This is more for demonstration purposes. But what we can do is into TM bubbles, we can pass those same parameters that we passed in when we were talking about color to create a bivariate map. So we can do color driven by, how about the 2030 population? And then we can do N, how about say 8 classes, and style, let's do quantile. Right, you'll notice we didn't get any errors. And if we do map underscore bivariate, we run that, you'll see now that what we've done is we've created a choropleth map based on the population of 2030, and that's where the different colors are coming from. And this is a choropleth map. It's been classified. And then pop 1990 is driving the size. And again, this is proportional. So there's a ramp of sizes that go from below this to above this, and these are just reference sizes. So hopefully that made sense. Hopefully the idea of TM bubbles makes sense, and that we can use TM bubbles with point data to generate proportional symbols, and that we can combine in TM bubbles the proportional symbols along with the choropleth map that we've been talking about before. What I want to do is I want to wrap this video up by saying that there is not an effective way to use shape in any geometry in tmap. There are ways you can get around it and you can sort of hack the system, but they require some manipulation of the data frame, and they're sort of well outside the scope of what a normal person would attempt to do. So for the sake of this video series, we're just going to say that at face value, there is no way to use shape as a visual variable in tmap, and that with size, we're limited again to this TM bubbles. Again, it is possible, but it requires a lot more coding and manipulation that isn't built into TM. So by default, this is what you have. You have the choropleth call parameter with all of its different ends and styles for choropleths. And then for size, you have TM bubbles. Hopefully this makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, I encourage you to go back, rewatch the videos. And as always, please reach out. Thank you.